Welcome back and welcome to the newcomers from Basel. Welcome to the Laufen Architecture during Art Symposium. Thank you could make it coming out here to Laufen, to this little town of Laufen. And we have a great evening program. The Architecture during Art Symposium has some history. We started many years ago. Some people in the audience were active participants in the past. Some might become active participants in the future. Again, we like to work with the people that we like, and I think it's really a pleasure to have you all here. And before anything, thank you, all of you coming, and thank you to the participants. We have a panel today talking about the subject of the Architecture Biennale of Venice, where as Laufen we were able to support the pavilions of Switzerland, Germany and Austria. We have today the curators here of Germany and Switzerland. The Austrian curator had to cancel this morning due to some illness, but nevertheless I'm sure we will have a very fruitful discussion. The discussion will be moderated by Tanja Heuchele. Tanja Heuchele is a design journalist based in Munich. She was, for example, here last year as a guest, so I'm not joking when I say maybe next year you will be an active participant. And we have Yves contributing to this panel. I would not want to take more of your time and ask all the panel on stage and Tanja to introduce our speakers and the subject.
Thank you very much. So I will go here and you go over there. Perfect. Hello and welcome again. So thank you all. Thank you first of all, Mark, for hosting this, for bringing arts, design and architecture together. And today we are very happy to have a conversation with Amy Perkins, Daniele Santucci and Yves Behar. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your time. And as you might notice, so we have a special guest on stage today. So
5 people.
So Vivian might get a bit tricky in the midst, but we'll see. We'll see how she's doing.
We'll see how long it lasts.
So, not before, but I attended quite a few panels the past days at Art Basel, and I'm a bit bored of reading bios, and I hope you don't mind stepping straight into a new way of introducing panelists. Which is why I want to ask you, why did you pick and decided going forward with being architects and a designer? What was the reason behind to choose those professions? Maybe you want to start, Amy?
According to my mother, I wanted to be an architect since I was very young. And so that was clear what I was going to go and study at university. And I arrived at university, and the first week I thought, well, what's this subject I've come to study? This has nothing to do with what I thought being an architect was, which is like, structures and designing a building. And we were asked to make an installation in response to a piece of poetry. And I was like, what is this? And I studied in the UK for my bachelor's and master's, and that thought has recurred on a regular basis ever since. What is this profession I'm in? It's got nothing to do with purely designing buildings. And so I've found ways of working within it which I also design buildings, but I also do writing and curating and installations, and it allows you as a kind of field to do very many different things. And I think that's what, this is one of the things that I most appreciate about it.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Daniele, how was it for you?
Well, I started when I was a kid. I was taking apart almost everything at home, and my parents were not amused at all because I was trying to drill the wall, doing these kind of things. And when I got older and I was on my own at home, it became even worse. So they said, okay, you can only be an architect. What else? and now actually it was always my desire to become an architect. And what I really loved during the studies, and that's maybe the reason why I continued studying the whole time, is that it's a very interdisciplinary and diverse discipline. So you have very different expertises, structures, design, poetry. You have some very, let's say, humanistic part in it, history a lot, and then very technical things. So I like this combination, and it's never boring. And as an architect, yeah, at least we pretend to dig in a lot of different topics.
Nice, thank you. Digging in different topics is also something that you can rely on?
Yes, I mean, I get easily bored, so it's good to jump into different problems and whatnot. But when I was a teenager, I was, surrounded or part in a little bit of the punk movement. And, we only think about the punk movement as a bunch of, derelicts with weird haircuts, at concerts. But for me, it was completely different. It's a creative movement. Mm-hmm. It gave the permission for lots of young creatives to try furniture, try music, try architecture, try design, without being trained, without sort of formal, sort of the traditional way of training. And so, I started building furniture, I started building objects in my parents' basement, and that was encouraged, actually. That was, I think my 14th or 15th birthday was like a workbench, like one of these big, thick wood workbenches with clamps and whatnot. So that's how I started making and building things. I went to school after, but that was really, I think, the starting point at 14, 15 to start exploring different types of designs.
And what are what are your highlights when you look back onto your careers? Maybe highlight one thing that changed it all, or what is like the first thing that comes up in your mind when you think what has changed it? Also, and at the same time also asking for the biggest failure. So that failure that changed it all, the thing that you nearly like dropped the pencil and said like, that's it, I'm out.
It's a really difficult question.
I know. Sorry.
I guess failure is quite a difficult word now, because I feel like everything that's difficult you always try and learn from, or you try and make into something that you can take as a positive. And I've been part of many different groups or offices or constellations in my career. I don't think there's been any major failures, but maybe just speaking to, because we're here to talk about the Biennale, just speaking to that project, I guess there was one moment right at the beginning, so my co-curator, one of the 5 curators is also here, Miriam, sitting at the front row. And we had not done very much together as a group before getting the commission to do the Swiss Pavilion. We're all very excellent, competent designers, but not necessarily so trained in maybe like the marketing or the fundraising or elevator pitches. And exactly 1 year ago, we came to Art Basel to a panel discussion to meet Carlo Ratti, to see what he was about, see what this exhibition was going to be about. And, shook hands, and he was like, go, what's the elevator pitch? What's your pavilion about? And I kind of rambled on about, the experience it was going to be, and it was going to be so great. And he was just like, no, he just wouldn't have any of it. He was like, you need to practice that. And that was a huge learning for us, that we had no idea how to kind of pitch things in a very smart way to, get funding or to get into certain situations. And it's maybe the biggest learning we had right at the beginning of the project.
And also being now here again, also a funny story, that now you practice elevator pitches, maybe?
Yeah, I'm still not that great at it, I have to say. It's maybe not one of my core skills.
All right, thank you for sharing. Do you also want to highlight your greatest thing? The greatest
thing
out of your bio that you would love to mention?
I have to say, I've been part of some of a really amazing group. So I also was part of Assemble in London, part of the team that put that together in 2010. And I'm always very cautious to take credit for too many things, because I feel like I've been part of so many great things that can't be all to do with me. But I think that's been a really great experience to be part of so many different collectives where the sum of the parts is really greater. The whole is really greater than all of the kind of contributions.
Just a little question here. Does anybody know what Assemble refers to? Maybe we explain that.
Design practice that was established in London in 2010. Just after graduating, we all graduated from Cambridge just after the financial crisis, and we all went into offices and started working as interns, basically, and we're very kind of disappointed that it wasn't as fun and exciting as architecture school was. And so we got together to do some kind of temporary self-build projects in London in 2010 to kind of 12, and then formalized more as a kind of office collective structure, which is still running today, but I'm not so involved. I still teach with members of Assemble, but I'm not so involved in the collective as a whole. But that was definitely a highlight, being part of that energy in 2010.
Thank you very much. What are your takes on this question? Who wants to start?
I can start. So for me, the moments of change, or the steps to success, it wasn't a straight line. It wasn't, I really started very humbly. It was just myself and an intern. I was 30-something years old. And I realized that I could, take very humble projects. Basically, everybody I met, I was like, if you want to do a project, we can do a project. And so my hairdresser was this French guy, was like, oh, I want to design shampoo bottles for kids. And so I, turned what was a very humble, inexperienced person's project into something that ended up being in both New York, I think, and San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And so for a while, I claimed that I was because we were a small, unknown studio, that I was turning shitty projects into great ones. And I think that's, in a way, what you have to learn as a young designer is you're not going to get the big commission from Nike or some big company. You're going to get some small commissions, probably with not a lot of money and not a lot of impact, unless you create that impact. Mm-hmm. And so that's maybe where I learned that every project, you need to sort of maximize the possibility and opportunity for it to become something that supports really the entrepreneur. So, when you talk about success and failures, I have worked in the last 17 or 18 years with over 100 startups, but 100 startups where I have some type of equity, some kind of partnership. And I think when you work with startups, and in general in design I agree as well, you fail every day, right? Every day you do something, it's not great, it's not the right idea. So failure is something that is, that helps you kind of refine to a good outcome. But I think for me, maybe the project that was the most, that created the most visibility and that it was truly an adventure, was the one laptop per child, the $100 laptop, which in 2008, 9, 10 was really the counterpoint to big tech, and it was really about bridging the digital divide, bringing computers for children in the developing world. And so that was an effort that was both very controversial, very much criticized by big tech.
Of course, they were missing some,
I mean, when you have
revenue.
When you have Bill Gates and Michael Dell and Steve Jobs throw bombs at you in the press, you know, you're sort of like, you could be intimidating and go crawl into, you know, under a rock or inside the toilet over there. But in the end, the project became actually something that they all ended up doing themselves.
Yeah.
They all, you know, launched products for low-cost products for education. And I'll just add this, that Steve Jobs actually quite liked the design, which was a rare, you know, piece of feedback you would get from somebody like Steve. So, so that probably was the big success. And in terms of failures, I don't know, I mean, there's so many. You know, when you work with startups, you know, some of them are, and you're the designer, you know, they tend to sort of point all the blame to the designer, which I've had a few of those, but including a juicing machine that really kind of got everybody very angry for some reason. But but these things happen, you know, startups have a 2 to 5% success rate. And what we try to do is to augment that success rate, but you never get to 100%. You don't even get to 50%. If you have products that are in the market and that are working, services as well, if you're at a 20% rate, you're really beating everybody much playing that game on the planet.
True.
So yeah, so failure is part of something that you have to grow comfortable with. But for me, risk is a bit of an addiction. So as you may have seen in the surfing pictures there, so it becomes something that you live for, some adrenaline rush. So I still do. I still do that. I still live by that.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Daniele, how was it about you?
Well, I'll start from the most exciting. In 2017 and 18, I was invited at MIT to join the Sensible City Lab as a visiting researcher. And of course, it was a great opportunity, but I was pretty, let's say, scared of this experience. Of course, it's a great university, people, but doing data science from architecture was not the easiest jump, let's say. But at the end, it turned out to be a great experience, also because the human part was extremely rich. I mean, MIT is a big community with people coming from every spot of the planet. And we had a lot of fun, we had a lot of exchange, everybody's very eager to share knowledge. So there is not even that competition that I was eventually expecting. So that was really a very, very important experience to me, which also led me to found my own company in 2020. And focusing on the topic of urban climate, of course. And I really think that was a big turning point in my life.
and somehow also collecting data there. So
yeah,
exactly
that's how everything started, basically. So, but it was also a contribution supported by other people. I mean, there are a lot of people that are really interested in exchanging knowledge, in integrating expertises. So in that sense, it was really only positive experience.
And failure?
Well, I think as Yves mentioned, if you are dealing with competition, designs, and so on, it's not really daily business, but almost.
Okay, I'm going to ask then two of you later again with some wine, maybe, if I get some more response to that. Okay, thank you. So you might have noticed the pictures that we see in the back. Those are the pictures from the three of them, of course, also showing the two pavilions, the Swiss pavilion, with some drawings as well, as we can see it right now, and also the German pavilion. Since we now see the German pavilion, and also, of course, some pictures of your beautiful products and projects that you worked on, since we see now the Swiss pavilion, and first of all, who went to the Architecture Biennale from here? Some hands, just to get an idea. Okay, we have to start from the very beginning, I think. So maybe you can introduce what pavilion you have in place. What are you showing?
So it's really worth visiting, because that's where you get the best experience of it. And like I established earlier, it's not so easy necessarily to describe in words, especially not in a very short amount of time. But our pavilion is a translation or a recreation of a piece of architecture that we found in the archives by an architect called Elizabeth Sachs. And she was a contemporary of the architect who designed the Swiss pavilion, so Bruno Giacometti. And they designed similar pavilions at similar times in the 1950s. Elizabeth Sachs was in 58, built in Zurich, and it was demolished very soon after it was built because it was for a temporary exhibition, although she really wanted it to stay. And Giacometti's was built in 53. And so we were initially really intrigued by these two architectures. They're built for very similar locations. And then we looked a bit further into the Giardini, which is where the country pavilions are in Venice, most of them, some of them in Arsenale, and found out that none of them had been authored. So the name on the plans, none of them were authored by women. And so that was our kind of initial move, was to think, okay, what if it had been Elizabeth Sachs? And what if we could recreate this piece of architecture almost quite literally as an overlay into the Swiss pavilion? And so we started by really doing just that, taking the plan of Bruno Giacometti and the plan of Elizabeth Sachs and stamping one onto the other. And we liked it. It looked really interesting. And we thought, let's just do that. And that's the idea that we stuck with really from the very beginning. But both pavilions were initially designed as art display structures. So the one in Zurich was to show the work of an association of women artists and sculptors, and the one in Venice, obviously, to show fine art in a very kind of typical way of paintings on walls or sculptures in space. And the ideas around that changed quite quickly after the 1950s. And I guess there wasn't so many opportunities that either were used for their original purpose of like paintings in a painting gallery. And we were confronted with this problem that we didn't want to show paintings or anything on the walls. Because once you show things on the walls, people look at the thing written or the plan, and they don't look at the space necessarily. And we wanted to really show this space. Also for ourselves to experience this piece of architecture that we saw, sketches of, photographs in the archive, photos of the building site, but we weren't able to see ourselves. And so we teamed up with an artist, Axel Stiefel, and she works in a way, it's called an embedded artist. She really was with us from the very beginning of the project. and it almost acted like a kind of both a sounding board, a mirror, someone she always listening and taking on board conversations, and she translated all of that into a sound piece, which is kind of a composition throughout the exhibition which tells the story of its construction through sound. Not literally, but you can kind of hear the voices, the sounds, the landscapes that were involved in the process of reconstructing this pavilion.
And now we can also see the whole curatorial team right behind us.
Exactly. And we translated the pavilion that was originally, so you can see that Giacometti's is made of brick and concrete, and Elizabeth Sacks's was also originally made of concrete, mainly concrete with some kind of steel plating and curtains, which we obviously didn't want to recreate for a 6 months exhibition, because concrete for 6 months doesn't seem that sustainable. So we made this translation into wood, because the original formwork, the board marks of the wood, we translated that into wood, which was finished with this breathable type of mineral paint that doesn't kind of damage the wood, means it can be reused, but it really gives this quite mineral texture, almost like concrete. And then had to decide along the way, often on the building site, which pieces to implement where, kind of what to leave away, how to do some of the obviously we did plan beforehand lots, but we had a lot of decisions left until while we were on the site, and we were always kind of strengthened in our confidence to do so by this sentence that was written on one of Elizabeth Sacks's original plans, which in German is endgültige Form wird von der Architektin am Bau bestimmt, which translates in English as very catchy title, translates in English to the final form will be decided by the architect on site. And that was the title of the whole exhibition, so that we could keep coming back to it and keep being strengthened in our resolve to kind of leave decisions to later, to come together on the building site and make some of these decisions with each other about how things would finally come to a form, or whether they would even come to a form.
And it is a very airy, a very silent entry when you get in, and you have the feeling that you get it somehow embraced, also by the sound installation that you're showing. So definitely a piece of art to visit for the summertime, maybe. So thanks for sharing. Daniele, you have quite a different approach to the overall topic Carlo Ratti was imposing, as called intelligence, for this year's Architecture Biennale. What is your take together with your 3 other colleagues?
So first of all, when we applied in the first phase, the title of the Biennale was not yet public, so we didn't know what the overall topic of the Biennale would be. And we applied with a quite similar concept, but we had already the title Stress Test. And the idea from the beginning was to have an experience, to transform the exhibition into a physical experience, not like didactic exhibition where we show pictures, texts, and so on. So it was about feeling what we humans experience or will experience during future climate in cities. That was the topic from the beginning. And then when Carlo presented the overall topic, intelligence, natural, artificial, collective, we thought, wow, that fits perfectly. Because as you see, we have, without knowing, we had an artificial, a natural part in the pavilion. And then, of course, collective is what we need all to do. So in some sense, we were reflecting the overall topic, but it was really a coincidence. And we applied the idea was to have something you can feel. So today, during the tour in the factory, we had, everyone had a strong stress test, I think. I mean, if you haven't been to the Biennale, to the German pavilion, you won't feel that heat, but the idea was to show, using the building as it is, and that's a difficult building because it has it was built in 1937 from Nazi Germany in fascist Italy, so it's pretty clear where it stands, and many biennales in the past were dealing with the history of the building. So but we were dealing with the building itself, so we were using the strong symmetry, showing how you can transform a space just with very limited interventions. For instance, insulation or heating, or also, let's say, deactivating the thermal mass. And you can use exactly the same space. You can shape it in a different way using natural ventilation, bright surfaces, inserting plants, and the idea is to see how different these two rooms feel.
If you haven't visited it yet, however you know the Biennale,
of course.
from many years. Now we are seeing two different nations showcasing different approaches. I'm wondering about your vision for the Biennale in the future, reflecting on nationality.
Well, I mean, I think a creative gathering like the Biennale is so important and so unique in a way. There are not many sort of creative professions that have sort of conceptual free reign, right, to architects, young architects, and give them, the opportunity for that experimentation. And I feel like experimentation is so essential to all the creative professions. And in a way, I feel like, while I do a lot of experimentation within our work, it's, a gathering like the Milan Furniture Fair, for example, is less experimental. I mean, the spaces and maybe the expression and the environment, may have an experimental element, but the work itself, used to be kind of all over the place, disheveled, and in the 2000s, and now it's become more commercial in a sense.
Yeah.
So for me, like the opportunity for experimentation at full scale, at architectural scale, is really extraordinary and really unique to the architectural profession. So invite me to one, and I'll do something. And I mean, we have a bit of a experimental lab within the studio, but and we've taken our chances with that in the past. But something I would definitely want to emphasize.
While we were having lunch before, we were talking about about the experiences on site. And there were many, and somehow, and funnily enough, we were talking about the bathroom situation, just so to say. So we were talking about the different ways on where you can, because everybody has to use the public toilets, even all the curators. I don't know if any of the curators from the past are here, but it's very difficult for the curators themselves to go somewhere, to just hide for a second. So what are the tweaks, what are the insights that you would like to share with the audience who possibly would also like to apply as Yves is going for in 2 years?
Give me the bathroom projects for the Biennale and I'll very happily do it. I've worked on a few bathrooms. I mean a few bathroom projects, including some that were for temporary events that separate the different materials, because that's something important to do for the environment, for example. But in any case, that sounds like a great project. I'll do it.
All right. Well, you know it now, Mark. But maybe we have some more insights.
I think Laufen would get a lot of love for providing decent bathroom experiences in the Architectural Biennale.
In Italy, in Venice.
Yeah.
It's a very bold message then too.
It's toy. The standard.
Yeah, the standard is there, yeah.
But there's also that great architectural bathroom experiment in Tokyo, which there was a film made of it, where different architects essentially designed very unexpected bathroom experiences, and they're like different in every neighborhood and whatnot. So I think it's an important, as you say, it's a place where you go for refuge from people, noise, crowds, and it's an important place where you can
breathe in for a moment.
Breathe in, relax.
Yeah.
Check your phone.
We were talking. Yeah, we were talking beforehand. It's a place of well-being. Would you say you had a place of well-being during the construction of the Biennale?
Well, our concept is based on a stress room and a de-stress room.
True.
So, of course, let's say the de-stress room is supposed to be the nice place. During the Biennale, I had my hidden spot on the roof of the pavilion. It's quite difficult to get there, but it was nice. We installed, for the first time, a PV photovoltaic array on the roof, so that we can provide, like a bit Laufen does in big, we did it in very small, but to provide carbon neutral energy supply to the exhibition. Plus, of course, it will stay, so I was dealing a lot. I installed a weather station on the roof, so that was my spot to hide from the chaos of the construction site in the pavilion. We didn't have a bathroom, we don't have a bathroom in the German pavilion, but the British do. But they don't tell, and they don't want, they were our neighbors, so they don't want anybody to know.
Very British.
I mean, the Swiss also have one. I don't know how public they make it either.
What have you experienced, Amy, during the setup phase at the Biennale? We were talking also about logistics and different kind of experiences that you would have loved to have known before, maybe from your former colleagues.
It's funny, you don't get to do the Biennale again, normally. You only get to do it once. And you learn all this very specific information about how to build in Venice. Which you don't ever get to put into place again. But I have to say, I was not often on the building site because I was quite heavily pregnant. But my colleagues have told me a lot about the process, and I think it's not easy at all. There's a lot to learn about how to bring material in and out of construction sites in Venice, because everything obviously has to come by boat. And we also learn a lot about moving things across borders, which I also kind of, didn't quite kind of, it's easier when you just send something, but if you're really like shipping material and you have to account for the different tax rates in different companies and what comes in and what comes out. But I think the biggest thing we really learn on the construction site is about communication. Because we're a team from all over Switzerland and the UK, although I'm based in Switzerland now. And we had many different languages, both kind of spoken languages, but also ways of communicating with one another. And 5 curators is also quite a lot of curators. And then the building site team, you added everyone up, including all of the activist builders we worked with, called Biennale, all of their interns, all of the kind of maybe people on Pro Helvetia's side. It's a lot of people, and learning how to communicate between everyone was probably the biggest thing that we kind of came away from that building site having learnt. although maybe not learnt to the full extent. We still need to kind of debrief on some things within the team for sure. But it wasn't easy all the time, at all.
So the communication, you mean?
Yeah, learning how to speak in different languages, and I don't mean spoken languages, but like how someone deals with a process or how someone does something differently when you're trying to work in a way which is like we're not one author who's kind of deciding on anything, but we're trying to do it in a more collaborative way, both with the people who are helping us build, but also between the team. That's the thing that really, I'd say, we worked on the most, and it's not visible in the exhibition at all. That's the biggest work in this exhibition, and what you see is a beautiful result, but it's not really to do with the kind of labor that was behind it.
How do you handle communication, Yves?
Well, I work all around the world. I'm very lucky, which is part of what makes the experience interesting. I have one of the longest work relationships I've had was with, I call him Mr. Kang, who was the head of design for the display division of Samsung. And what was fascinating is he wasn't speaking a word of English, and I wasn't speaking a word of Korean. And we worked together for over 10 years, I think 11 years, nonstop. And we had this really incredible, friendship, relationship, and kind of parity of concept and ideas. And the translators could not believe it, just the way we were communicating, because he would say a few things in Korean, and I would get what he was saying either by the body movement or because he inserted one word here, one word there, and I would continue in English and he would continue in Korean, and the translators couldn't catch up with us. We were ahead of them, even though we didn't share a language. Of course, we communicate a lot through drawings, but we would go to places, and we would start drawing on the walls. I mean, it was on construction places or brainstorm places. And it was one of the most unique experiences that made me really realize that language is just one form of how you connect, kind of creatively with people. But that language is not the only form, and that sort of creativity and the exchange of ideas and what gets you kind of excited in this call and response, which is brainstorming and building things together, can really happen across culture and across languages in a beautiful way. And so it's about that's what the kind of partners you look for, in the creative field. And they may happen not to speak a single word or you may not have even, any words that you can share together.
Yeah. This sounds pretty unique.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to take that as an example. Okay, I'm only going to look out for the people that are not speaking my language, just to be on the safe side that we are going to link by drawings and our visions. Well, pretty unique. Difficult also to recommend there anything.
What I would say is, to kind of give it a more general, less sort of specific example, is that what I have found is the best way to get people aligned and working together and moving forward is to agree on ideas, not forms, not drawings, not the shape of things, but the ideas. And often I've said that many times, is that if you share an idea and it becomes a common idea, and it doesn't matter who the other person is, if it's a marketing person, a CEO, an engineer, you can always go back to the original idea and say, and feel like partners. We're partners in ideas. The form and the process and the engineering and the technology and the challenges of how something gets built is secondary to the idea. And I think the one challenge we have in the society that we live today, and the reason why I think there's a sense of being stuck in so many different places, is because we don't have a shared idea of how we would move forward, right? And that's called, that creates a social dissolution of sorts. As long as people share in ideas, hopefully big ones, you can move incredible teams, incredible innovations forward. And I think, the social media/media world that we live in is trying to separate us rather than unite us. And I think in my design process and creative process, if we share the idea, things move beautifully forward.
What do you think about what you just listened? Because I see you have your thoughts lingering there.
But just coming back to what you were saying about this method of communication, I'd say it sounds quite unique, but not that unique, actually. And I think I can only speak for architecture as a profession, but there are so many ways of communicating through different, like a model or a drawing, or also writing text where you're not really trying to explain something, but the text is trying to give an impression, or language. I think that we learned a lot about that in the project, and we had these quite special moments led by the artist Axel Stiefel about listening sessions. So all these recordings, we had field recorders, and we would go and record, and she would kind of, with the sound designer, put these packages of sounds together for us, curated to each of us to listen back to. Even in the midst of the most stressful parts of the project, there would be these listening sessions where we had to kind of sit and listen to these pieces of sound and kind of talk about them or respond to them in some way. And I think it's very easy when you share a language to ignore all those other aspects of ways of communication. And maybe this not sharing a language prompted you to use some of those other tools. And that was what was really special about these listening sessions. It really made you do it, made you sit and listen to things which aren't just, we have to put this social media post together, or we have to discuss where this wall's going to go and what color this thing's going to be. Those moments were really special, I thought. And maybe coming back to what you said about ideas, I would maybe slightly disagree and say it's about values. Mm-hmm. We spent a lot of time in our group talking about, or trying to establish what the shared values we had were, in order to base the ideas on, actually. Because somehow they crumble a bit if you don't have underneath them a shared sense of why are we doing this? Why do we want to do this? And why do we want to do it together? Why do we want to do it like that? Otherwise, somehow the ideas can diverge, I think, a bit in the later stages.
Do you think we ask often enough why? Maybe Daniele?
Well, I think we have a lot of images. We have the opportunity, but maybe we don't dig into the values. We don't dig to the core of the questions. So it stays everything on a quite superficial way in general, and it doesn't tackle the core of the questions. So maybe we don't ask often enough why.
You seem to ask in your questions quite often why, because you tackle it from the other way, many of your designs. Is that right, as I perceive it?
Yeah, I think asking questions is definitely part of being in the creative field. But also being comfortable with asking a lot of stupid questions, because you're never the specialist in the room. You're always, you have a screen engineer or a sound engineer or a tool maker, for ceramics. And some of the things you're going to say are going to be really stupid, and you need to be okay with that. I think it's so asking questions is a form of learning. That's the way children learn, and that's I don't know why at some point through adulthood, you you get shy about asking questions because you don't want to look stupid. But I think being a designer for me is being comfortable with looking stupid quite often. But that said, some questions, and that's why it's good to be an outsider, and that's why, you know, being a designer inside a company, you stop kind of poking the buttons, stop asking the questions. Whereas when you come from the outside, you become more maybe comfortable kind of challenging or bringing these questions up again, right? And you know, but the key, and I agree with the values kind of come back here, the key is that you work with people who are willing to still challenge themselves, even though they may be veterans of the company. For example, working with some of the almost retired engineers. I mean, they, you know, for this project, they brought back a retired engineer, you know, because he only likes to work on new, fun ideas, and he has all this experience, and you know, he could have said, nah, this project, I'll work on something else, because, you know, he's a lifer, he's probably been 40 years in the company. So, you know, finding these people that still have the spark in their eye, that still have the, you know, that still want to see things change and evolve, is the other secret, I think, of, you know, finding people who are willing to answer your stupid questions and work on your things that may be a little harder, at least initially, but can still feel like it's possible. Those are the people that make all the difference in projects. And that's why projects are not, they're always multiple authors. That's why we need to remain really humble. You know, the fact that they happen isn't through a single person, it's always a group.
It's also the initial thing that you all agreed on when you were sharing why you do and what were your highlights in the past. It was all about collaborative approaches. Speaking of why, asking enough questions and working together, you are all teachers and professors at the university, or have been. Do you see the eagerness in the students of today? Whoever wants to start.
I can start if you want.
Sure.
I think students today don't believe enough in the power they have in changing things. That's what I miss. I think that I mean, maybe it's a cultural thing, maybe for sure, and I can talk, of course, of German students, of my students, of course, but seeing the difference between 10, 15 years ago, I think that the young people had more, were believing more in their possibility of influencing things, in changing things. Now this is less visible, or there are less people that they're trying more to adapt, which might be a threat for change, being more passive towards asking questions, for instance. I think the two things are connected.
You seem to agree, Yves. How do you encourage that? The eagerness and the boldness in the students so that they are more courageous?
You know, I'm trying not to be one of these people who kind of points at the younger generation and points at all the problems that are going on with them. I still think there are people that are willing to take pain.
Of course.
And I think pain is part of learning. This is how kids learn. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the technology that we use makes learning fun and easy and lots of little rewards. But in real life, it's not like that. That's not the way you learn to walk. You walk by smashing your face so many times. But you still continue to try to walk. Every time you make one good step, there isn't an app coming up and sending you a little, you know, a little...
You go, girl.
You go, you know, you did great. And I think, you know, unfortunately, part of the tools that we have are very much about convenience and encouragement. But I do think that youth has to kind of fight against a wall, you know, has to be against things, has to, you know, I mean, that's the way it felt being in Switzerland, you know, being in Switzerland like a young creative in the 80s, you know, we couldn't even have like a good place where, you know, the music we liked would be played. We had to fight for that. Mm-hmm. We had to do demonstrations that were going on in Lausanne and Zurich mostly, for people who remember that old time.
Some are smiling, yes, some do remember.
So you know, sort of, you have to push against something. And in a world of sort of convenience and encouragement, I think it's harder to kind of find that. But there are people like that, and I think those are the ones you want to encourage, or you know, you want to hopefully be a spark and say, yes, you can challenge this. Yes, you can go against the grain. Yes, you can revolt against the status quo. Mm-hmm. You know, and there is a lot to, you know, to revolt against, you know, these days. I'm fully, you know, encouraging that. You know, I think part of the challenge is the system that we offer, you know, currently sort of young people is really divided between, you know, the sort of fast images, visuals, you know, people who are basically ambassadors and you know, through social media, and that seems like, oh, this is the way you kind of put a very individualistic point of view in the world, right? It's sort of a very easy path for things, and it's not so celebrated to be sort of hard working and suffering and, you know, working into the night, you know, on the other side. That's not what's being shown, right? We're being shown like the ultimate perfect world of the final result.
Of getting up at 5 a.m. and doing like all the sports things and nurture ourselves as good as it can be. Yeah. Yes, it is perfect world.
So, you know, I think there's a lot to challenge, and I would encourage, you know, students and young designers to challenge kind of the image that we're propagating, that things are easy and smooth and frictionless, which they're not.
Would you encourage that too, Amy?
I guess I probably haven't been teaching as long. I've been teaching about 10 years in different institutions in the UK and in Switzerland. And I find it more difficult to make generalizations about how students have changed. Probably partly because I can't really tell how much I've also changed in that time. And maybe I've just grown up and have some different values than they have. Or different kind of interests in my life, but I would say that I guess rather than like thinking of the students as having changed, as maybe like why maybe they might have changed, and I would say that there's certainly more of a feeling that students have more precarity, and that they don't have the means to take as many risks necessarily as you might have had 15 years ago, of like the potential to fail and pick yourself back up again. Or that's the feeling I get, that people need a bit more stability and a bit more kind of regular income. And then I also think that maybe it's the move to Switzerland, or maybe it's institutions have changed, that failure and risk-taking is not very valued in the institutions I work at. Like it's not failing your design, or like trying something out and taking a big risk and failing often means you get kicked out of the university or you have to redo the year. Or so it's not a culture where it's kind of that's supported necessarily. So I would maybe like, and the other point about kind of organizing and maybe like protest movements, especially maybe ones in the 70s or 80s, I get the impression that the students didn't have, 30 credit points to get every single semester, which is like, I don't know how many hours a week, but probably more hours than they are in a working day. And I think to, organize, yes, you need to get off Instagram and meet some people, but you also need time and space to kind of come together and meet like-minded people, understand what common shared issues are, and then organize around it. And if you're like constantly working towards this idea of excellence in an institution, I don't think it's as easy to say, to kind of organize a protest movement necessarily.
Can I summarize in a certain way of we need more punk movements? Would you all agree on that?
Less credit points. Reduction of credit points in the semester. I would say I would put the onus on the institutions rather than on the students.
I see. Good.
Less gold stars.
Yeah.
Less gold stars. Also nice conclusions here. Before we jump into the Q&As, so that you now can think about your questions, if you have any. My final question to you would be, what would you, as the curators of this year's pavilions, would like to have the people leaving when they visited your pavilion? What is the vision that the visitors are getting out of your pavilion?
For me, it's maybe twofold. One is experiential, that it's just a different atmosphere than the rest of the maybe the Arsenale or like the heat of the Venice summer, that maybe you come out thinking like, I'm feeling a bit refreshed from the space on the architecture, but also that you've encountered a great female architect from history that you didn't know about before.
And for you, Daniele?
I wish they, first, I guess many of them already are familiar with the topic, but maybe through their own experience, through their own feeling, they bring it into their lives and they reflect on that on daily. Mm-hmm. Especially, in critical areas where overheating is a problem, reflecting on people who are more exposed to that, who are suffering from that. I think somehow the problem, or in some places, is ignored or partially ignored. So just spreading. And that's how the whole thing ends in our exhibition. It is a call to action, so that everyone really has influence and can do something. We can change things if we start doing also small things that bring change. We can't expect that someone else does it for us.
So take action.
Yes.
And learning and getting to know the past and honor that in a certain way.
Well, I agree with the 2 points there in terms of taking it home, reflection, and in terms of experiential. But I would say the third one, or for me, is what I said earlier, which is I want people to feel smarter from the encounter. Mm-hmm. There's so much unmet demand that we take for granted as users, as humans. We don't believe that change can be done by industry because we see very incremental or very slow change. And so when you create something that is different, of exception, and you have the right values and ideas behind it, people feel like, they recognize it as the change maybe they never, they had given up on, mm-hmm. or they thought was not possible. And I think that is what we can do. What I can do is, I want people to walk away, experiencing some of the things I may be making and feel just smarter about their choice and about the experience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's hop into the audience. Are there any questions to the three on stage? Any questions about the Biennale? Maybe you want to apply for next year's. Now you have everybody on stage who can pitch all the information that you could probably have. Yes, Johan, please.
Hi, everybody.
Try again, maybe they just need it.
Yeah, it is. My name is Johan Jelowitz. I'm from Brand New World. I was your colleague in the former years chairing this beautiful forum. I want to catch up with the Venice pavilions and to give a huge compliment to Laufen for having these two amazing speakers here, and to express my sorry that the Austrian pavilion is not here today as well.
We are sorry too.
Because this for me was the best pavilion of the entire Venice Biennale, and I will just shortly for everybody to share
Please.
it, to conclude why. Your pavilion is literally so amazing that me, honestly, I would like it to be a permanent installation of the Swiss pavilion, because it also beautifully shows art. It's absolutely amazing. Your pavilion saved my life. I was sitting in your green room for 1 hour. It was 45 degrees at the opening of the Biennale. So it was really amazing, especially after visiting the Arsenale with the hot installation at the entry and so on and so on. But the difference really to everybody, including your amazing, let's say, places 2 and 3, from hundreds of pavilions, amazing curatorial work from you guys to bring them here, is the Austrian pavilion, where they, in a shockingly way, showed what the city of Vienna, if you've seen it and if you recalled it, did to the future of housing, social housing, and everything. That really is the only future how to tackle living in the cities today, and we are all here basically living in cities. If we would now raise our hands, it's like nobody here is living in villages right now, of people being involved in businesses like this. So it's really amazing. I'm really sorry that they're not here, because they juxtapose it with the city of Rome, which is totally falling apart.
Yes.
And if anybody goes to Venice this year, I'm really sorry. So I'm springing in now for the guys that are not
Very
here.
good. Yes,
you
thanks for
have
doing
to
that.
visit the Austrian pavilion together with the Swiss and German, because these are 3 really valuable lessons that everybody should see. Amazing. But for me, coming with the bus, I'm the poor guy at the end, and there's a lot of people coming with the bus. We were not VIP guests. We would like to hear more from Yves. I know that you heard that people heard you in the factory already, but can you give us 5 seconds just about your work for Laufen, because we are all here. We have a very rare opportunity to have one of the global design superstars in the audience, so basically this is very inspirational for us. Just 5 minutes for us who were not in a factory.
Well, somewhere between 5 seconds and 5 minutes, I think I can do it.
Thank you.
So this is my first project in bathroom ceramics, and I'm very sort of attached to my own experiences in water, having been a competitive swimmer when I was a kid, and now being a surfer, which is sort of a midlife crisis passion and pursuit that I do. And so the other aspect of it is what Laufen has worked on for the last 4+ years, which is the first electric kiln. So a kiln that heats up to 1500 degrees, between 1200 and 1500 degrees on the inside, that is 100% electric and fed by, instead of gas, natural gas, and fed by a solar panel farm right outside of the factory. This is the first one ever built, and this is a technology that's like 1,000 years old, kiln to make pottery and whatnot. And so it's the first CO2-free production of bathroom ceramics, which I wanted to celebrate by creating something both poetic and functional. And so what we did is instead of the water coming out of the spout of the faucet and going straight into the sink and disappearing. I felt we should show the flow of water. And so the water circulates around the bowl, takes a few seconds, and then disappears.
You can even see it like here, for whoever who's haven't seen the presentation before.
So you can see the flow of water like a river flowing into the outlet. And what that creates, which we discovered by experimenting, it cleans up, just like a river cleans up the sediments of a river, it cleans up actually the dirt. So it requires less cleaning, it uses less water. The water pools on the bottom part if you want to, so you have a smaller basin. You can fill up the whole thing, of course, but you have a smaller basin. So anyways, you can see different versions of it. There's more in the back. And there's just the beginning of an idea of designing a sink and maybe a water experiences from the inside out, from the flow of water, not just from the way it looks on the outside.
It's even like a little playful to see it.
Yeah, it's playful, it's poetic, it's nature. We should celebrate this rare, even though in Switzerland it doesn't feel rare, but this rare source of life, which water is. And what's extraordinary is like it's created by fire. So you have fire with, in the kiln, fire from the sun itself, and fire and water are these two essential elements of creation and life.
The kiln gets up to which degree?
Between 1200 and 1500?
1250.
Yeah.
1250,
yeah.
So 1250 degree, just next door, and everybody who came back from the tour was kind of sweaty, I have to confess. Yeah, so, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions? Thanks very much.
You just became my wife's superhero for our kid's toothbrush. I mean, if you solve this problem, this is going to be the global bestseller. Huge applause for everybody who has kids with toothbrush. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I guess not.
So it's always interesting to me that this is a question I'm asking to the audience, but this happens every single time. It takes a while for the first question to kind of come up.
Totally, yes.
And then a few minutes later, you usually have many more hands and people comfortable jumping into the subject. So whenever you are ready, I see
There's a hand
being raising back there. Whenever you're ready, jump into the pool.
Ah, yeah, okay. Pity. There's a hand. Good one. And it's a real question. Thanks very much for jumping in, for break the silence.
Thank you. I totally agree with the guy in the first or second row that you both pavilions were one of the best in the Biennale this year. But maybe the question goes out to the Swiss pavilion. Did you get any recommendation for your honoring Lisbeth Sachs? Because the topic was a little bit off topic, right, this year, from the general topic of the Biennale. Did you get any response or feedback of this idea?
From who?
From the audience, from anyone.
Yeah, we got very good feedback actually, and I think, similar to the German pavilion, the theme that Carlo Ratti comes up with is announced much later than our project is already running by the time the theme is announced, and you kind of have to think, okay, how does this work with the theme? And initially we were like, okay, no, it doesn't really. But the more we thought about it actually, especially reading some of what Carlo Ratti wrote about the main theme, we could find many different ways that it played into the same ideas, like the idea of a continuum of history, learning from history, going back to people who've done things before, how they've done things, looking really in detail at what they've done. I think everyone can agree that that's a form of intelligence, because to make a break with history, I think that's probably not an intelligent way to design. And then the way that we did the process as well, of constantly in collaboration with the people who were on site and building it and working with partners and including them in the process rather than kind of handing over a design, I would say that's also an intelligent way of practicing architecture for the future. And this idea of including many voices and listening is also a way of I'd say, an intelligent way of designing and practicing architecture. I have to say that it doesn't, on first appearance, they're worlds apart, the kind of exhibition in the Arsenale and our installation, but I think if you dig a bit deeper, or even if you look at some of the exhibits in the Arsenale, they have a spirit to them which is very similar actually. And most of them, although they're kind of many of them, if you look at each individual one, there's often a kind of an experiential aspect or an attempt to kind of look at the past and learn for the past for the future.
There's another question coming up. Thanks, Mark.
Just a technical question. Is it often or always the case that the theme is not known before the pitches for the individual pavilions take place?
Each country is different, so the commissioning body decides when they...
So often the pitch happens and then the theme comes on top?
Depending on depending on the country.
Interesting. Okay.
It seems that there is no curator, the curator comes later. So
the curator actually doesn't have technically any influence over the country pavilions. They're autonomous.
that's funny.
But he takes all the credits, though.
No, I can explain a little bit as well, because I'm working very closely with the Venice Biennale. There are two parts of the Venice Biennale. There is the Arsenale, where the curator has all the power and where he basically lives for, like in a monastery for 2 years, visiting everybody, where he literally gives the job to every single exhibit in the Arsenale. And then there are the national pavilions. So there are these, which are mostly around the Giardini. So this is the striking difference, and sometimes they actually don't match with each other. This happens historically, but the Arsenale is always straight on. This is the concentration, and it's understood what the general topic and what the general idea of that year is.
Well, and just to add one thing, this year the central pavilion in Giardini was closed due renovation, so everything was put in the Arsenale, but usually the main exhibition, the main topic is placed in the central pavilion plus the Arsenale, yeah.
Well. So whatever question may appear later, the panelists will remain staying here for a little bit longer. So is there really another question? Okay, well, that's going to be the last question then.
Thank you. Just a question for the three of you. In contrast, both pavilions being temporary architecture, how did you approach the sustainability aspect of the project? There were some words already during the panels, but could you focus on this aspect? And for Yves, designing products which are meant to last, how do you also approach this topic of sustainability?
Yeah, it was a big topic actually through the whole process for us, because we knew we wanted to build something which was quite physical and present, partly to kind of honor the work of Lisbeth Sachs and to give you a really impression of the original pavilion, and something which could kind of hold its own in relation to the brick and concrete of Giacometti. But from the beginning, we were kind of questioning, okay, what could we build it from, and how could we build it in a way which you can either reuse things or use recycled material? And luckily, the Swiss Pavilion has a long-standing relationship with a group called Biennale, who are kind of an amazing group of activists based in the Veneto, who maybe 10, 15 years ago saw this kind of cycle of like horrendous waste that would get shipped off from the Biennale every year, and they said, okay, we'll basically set up a construction company that plans how to reuse parts of the previous year's exhibition in this year's. And so if you're early enough with your project, you can go to them and say, okay, we kind of need something a bit like this, and they can say, okay, we'll get these boards from here, or we've got a project somewhere else where we can kind of reuse all of this wood in this community center, or to make benches over here. Or so they're kind of amazing group who masterminds all of this circular economy of the construction materials of the Biennale constructions. And so a lot of it we could reuse, and we paid attention to how things are fixed as well, so that you could unscrew things quite easily, because it has to be dismantled very quickly. So screws rather than nails, types of paint that aren't kind of harmful for when you rework the wood. And then there were some aspects that we really had to struggle with, because we were like, we really need them. You really need them for this architecture, but they're not necessarily easy to reuse afterwards. And there's still an ongoing project with them to figure out, like, for these slightly more special pieces. I mean, curtains can quite easily come back to Switzerland and be reused somewhere else, but these kind of ring beams, if you go, you'll see there's this kind of circular ring beams clad in metal, which are very beautiful, but we need to still find a project where they can go to afterwards, and we're still working with them on that.
Yes, we applied already with a sustainability concept, let's say. So the PV was the most challenging part, because it's very difficult to get a PV authorized in Venice. Plus, most of the pavilions, including the German ones, are protected, are listed buildings. So you need an authorization from Superintendenza to make it, and then to keep it. But we got it, so we are covering the consumption mainly through the PV. And we decided, and that was also part of the concept, not to intervene on the building itself. So there is nothing that we changed in the architecture, no screws, nothing. We took over the insulation from the Art Biennale, from the last year's Biennale. So the cladding, the insulation in the stress room is taken, is one-to-one, the ones they didn't remove, basically. And the structure was commissioned and will be placed in Munich after the end of the Biennale, and the trees will be planted in the Giardini.
Thank you very much. There are lots of many other things I think that we can talk about later on.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I get the sense of people getting thirsty. I don't know if you feel the same thing. So I will wrap it up now. For now, whatever question you may still have, please, here they are tonight. Please ask them whatever question you might still have. I hope that this is fine with you. All agreeing? Perfect. So thanks for now. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your voices, for your visions that you're sharing. Yeah. Okay. No? All right. So thanks again. Thanks to Mark, to the whole team at Laufen, for providing a stage that is allowing to rehearse change. If it's going as a punk revolution, or people gathering, or any kind of new visions to be tried out. So thanks a lot. I hope you're enjoying a beautiful rest of the evening. Thanks a lot for your time. Hope you enjoyed it. And I think this is all that I got written here. So thanks.
Tanja.
Thank you.